How bad was Zach Wilson exactly? When the New York Jets selected Zach Wilson with the second overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, there was an electric buzz in the air. Jets fans thought they'd found their savior, the man who would finally lead them out of the football wilderness and back into Super Bowl contention. Spoiler alert, that did not happen. What unfolded instead was a roller coaster of frustration, confusion, and unfulfilled potential. Zach Wilson's tenure as the Jets starting quarterback was so rocky, it could have been a Netflix drama, except no one would have believed the plot was real. How bad was Zach Wilson as an NFL player, you ask? Well, let's dive into the tale of what went wrong for the talented, promising QB from BYU who just couldn't figure out how to quarterback in the NFL. Let's set the stage. It's 2020 and Zach Wilson's stock is skyrocketing, coming off a stellar season at BYU, where he threw for 3,692 yards, 33 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. Wilson was being hailed as the next big thing. He had the arm strength, mobility, and swagger that made scouts drool. Jets fans who had suffered through years of quarterback mediocrity and frustration, from Mark Sanchez's butt fumble to Sam Darnold seeing ghosts, were desperate for a savior. Wilson was supposed to be that guy. He had the hair, the baby face, and the flashy arm to bring hope to a fan base that had been wandering the football desert since Joe Namath guaranteed victory in Super Bowl III. And then came reality. The excitement was palpable as Wilson took the field for his rookie season. Week 1, 2021, the Jets were facing off against the Carolina Panthers. This was it, the moment the legend would begin. Well, not quite. Wilson's debut was rough, to say the least. He was sacked a few times, threw an interception, and the Jets lost 19-14. But hey, it was just the first game, right? No need to panic. He would adjust, settle in, and become the quarterback New York had been waiting for. Except he didn't. Over the course of his rookie season, Wilson's performance was erratic at best. He finished the season with 9 touchdowns to 11 interceptions and a 3-10 record. He had flashes of brilliance, sure, but they were about as frequent as solar eclipse. More often than not, Wilson looked confused, overwhelmed, and downright lost on the field. Jets fans started to get that familiar sinking feeling, the one where optimism slowly drains away like the last bit of toothpaste from the tube. Was this really the guy? Was this really the future of the franchise? Heading into the 2022 season, the Jets had done what any reasonable franchise would do to help their young quarterback. They surrounded him with talent. They drafted dynamic wide receiver Garrett Wilson, signed some offensive linemen, and bolstered the defense. Everything was in place for Zach Wilson to take the leap in his sophomore season. Instead, he belly flopped. Wilson missed the first 3 games of the season with a knee injury, which gave Jets fans a temporary reprieve on what was about to come. When he finally returned, it quickly became apparent that the learning curve had not been kind to him. Wilson's decision-making was still a major problem. He seemed incapable of throwing the ball away, often choosing instead to make head-scratching throws into double and triple coverage. By week 8, he had very little performance to show for. The Jets were winning games, but not because of Wilson, more in spite of him. And then in week 11, everything unraveled. Facing off against the New England Patriots, Wilson had what can only be described as an all-time bad game. He completed just 9 for 22 passes, and the Jets lost 10-3. After the game, when asked if he felt like he let the defense down, Wilson responded with,
as an offense, though, I mean, when you guys are only able to score 3 points, the defense only lets up 3 points. I mean, do you feel like you let the defense down at all?
No.
Thank you.
a nonchalant no, which in retrospect may have been the point at which his fate was sealed. That word infuriated not just fans, but his teammates. The defense had played lights out, holding the Patriots to just 3 points offensively, and Wilson's refusal to take accountability came across as immature, entitled, and tone deaf. It was like watching someone trip on the sidewalk, then blame the concrete. The fallout from Wilson's post-game comments was swift and brutal. Head coach Robert Saleh made the decision to bench Wilson, replacing him with Mike White. Yes, Mike White, a guy who had been drafted in the 5th round in 2018 and spent most of his career as a backup. And here's the kicker. Mike White played better than Zach Wilson. In White's first game starting in his place of Wilson, he threw for 315 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Jets' offense suddenly looked alive, and the fan base started chanting for White instead of Wilson. The writing was on the wall. Zach Wilson wasn't the guy. It wasn't just a performance that did him in. It was his lack of accountability, his seeming inability to learn from mistakes, and the growing sense that the team simply played harder for other quarterbacks. By the end of the 2022 season, Wilson had been benched again after another disastrous game against the Jaguars, where he completed only 9 of 18 passes for 92 yards. Oof. So what exactly went wrong for Zach Wilson? Why did a quarterback with all the physical tools, arm strength, mobility, and a quick release crash and burn so spectacularly in the NFL? Well, first of all, Wilson's biggest problem was his tendency to force plays that weren't there. Quarterbacks like Tom Brady and Drew Brees built all of fan careers on making the smart, simple play. Wilson, on the other hand, seemed to treat every down like it was the last play of the Super Bowl. The leap from college football to the NFL is massive, especially when it comes to reading defenses. At BYU, Wilson faced relatively simple defensive schemes compared to what he saw in the NFL. Once he got to the pros, the complex coverages and blitz packages confused him. He frequently misread defenses, resulting in bad throws and interceptions. Wilson's infamous no response after the Patriots game wasn't just a PR disaster. It was a glimpse into a large issue. Quarterbacks in the NFL needs to be leaders, both in the locker room and on the field. Wilson's apparent lack of accountability and aloofness hurt the standing with his teammates, who needed to believe in him. Once that belief eroded, it was hard to win back. Part of what made Wilson exciting at BYU was his gunslinger mentality, but in the NFL, that confidence quickly morphed into recklessness. He seemed convinced that he could thread the needle or escape pressure no matter what, even when the smarter option would have been to throw the ball away or check down. In other words, overconfidence. Was Zach Wilson bad? Objectively, yes. He had moments of brilliance, but they were fleeting. The weight of expectations combined with poor decision making, leadership concerns, and a failure to adjust to the speed of the NFL ultimately led to his downfall. In the end, Zach Wilson serves as a reminder that being a great NFL quarterback isn't just about arm talent and mobility. It's about mental toughness, leadership, and making the right decisions when everything's on the line. Unfortunately for Wilson, those were the things that he just couldn't figure out in time. Do you think Zach Wilson will forever make a huge comeback? Let us know in the comments below. If you're new to this channel, click on the bell icon to be notified about our latest videos. And as always, stay tuned with NFL Insider.